By now, everyone has heard of the Piney Point gypstack and the near collapse that almost happened. The total impact of this disaster to the bay and wildlife will take months, if not years, to determine. Today, I would like to tell you about a much bigger problem that the bay will have to deal with in the future. I am talking about the Riverview gypstack, which is just 15 miles up the road from Piney Point. And just like Piney Point, the Riverview stack has also been owned by multiple corporations, and most of them have ended up in bankruptcy. One of the earlier owners of Riverview stack was the Gardiner Incorporated. It was purchased in 1973 from U.S. Phosphoric by Francois Gardiner. But after 12 years, in 1985, the phosphate company files Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Later that year, Cargill acquires 80% of Gardiner Incorporated. Cargill is owned by 5 generations of the Cargill family. This multinational corporation is a giant in the agro-business industry with 160,000 employees in 70 countries and partnerships in over 125 countries in the food, agricultural, and the financial industries. It is headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and has been the largest privately owned corporation in the United States for decades. Its annual revenue in fiscal year 2019 was $113.5 billion. Unfortunately, Cargill's environmental record is full of blemishes. In 2004, Cargill was the largest U.S. importer of palm oil, sourcing the oil from at least 26 producers and buying roughly 11% of Indonesia's total oil palm output. Cargill purchased oil palm from many more worst of the worst rainforest destroyers, and in 2007, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization said that oil palm plantations were driving the destruction of tropical rainforests around the globe. Indonesia, which had the world's highest rate of deforestation, with on average 20 square miles of rainforest destroyed every day. Indonesia wasn't the only forest Cargill was destroying. The Amazon was also under attack for their deforestation practices. Greenpeace released a report in April of 2006 criticizing Cargill for its alleged role in deforestation of the Amazon. The report said that Cargill was the dominant company that exposed deforestation to the indigenous tribes, making them vulnerable for the loss of their lands. The report also said that Cargill had slave laborers working at these soy farms 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are many more horror stories about Cargill, but let's get back to Tampa Bay. In August of 2004, the DEP warned officials at the Cargill Phosphate Company in Riverview, Florida, that their dike was not sturdy enough. Reinforcements were underway when waves churned by Hurricane Francis broke through the dike and surrounded the retention pond, spilling 65 million gallons of acidic wastewater into Tampa Bay on September 5, 2004. A spokesperson for the Cargill Phosphate Company called it one of the worst environmental disasters to strike Tampa Bay in years, a 10 on a scale from 1 to 10. Since Cargill was a privately owned corporation, the Cargill family were the only owners. But they were way too big to file bankruptcy, so you won't believe what they did next. On October 22, 2004, the Cargills formed a new corporation that took over the ownership of Riverview just a little over a month after this disaster. They called their new corporation Mosaic. Cargill made Mosaic public so it would have lots of owners and traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker MOS. In May of 2011, Mosaic and Cargill complete the transaction to split off and distribute Cargill's stake in Mosaic, severing all ties to this newly formed corporation. It is not a matter of if, but when the next disaster will happen to this Riverview stack, and when it does, Mosaic will probably file bankruptcy and leave the taxpayers to clean up their mess. The bankruptcy papers are probably already filled out and sitting in the CEO's desk. The problem is, any disaster from this stack has the potential of being 10 times more catastrophic than all of the Piney Point spills were. Comparing these two stacks are like night and day. The Piney Point stack is only 65 feet tall and covers about 70 acres. The Riverview has two stacks, and both are almost 200 feet tall, and together they total about 380 acres. The big differences between these two are the water that's being stored in these stacks. The Piney Point stack has not been operational for decades, and its water has been diluted over the years, and most of it has leaked out, so there was very little toxic water left. The pH of the water that was just released into Tampa Bay is 4.8, slightly more acidic than a cup of coffee. Unfortunately, Riverview is an active phosphate plant, and its water is full of chromium, mercury, sulfuric acid, arsenic, fluoride, and radioactive uranium. The pH of the water at the Riverview is a little over 1. That's right, 1. The Piney Point gypstack has very few people living within a mile of it. During the latest spill, there were only about 300 homes that were in the evacuation list. Unfortunately, Riverview is a different story. There are thousands of homes located within a mile of Riverview, and every day, more condos are being built despite the danger located not far away. There are a half a dozen schools. There is a huge sports complex where kids play baseball and football. There are hundreds of businesses, including shopping malls where people buy their food, and lots of industrial warehouses. The Riverview stacks are newer and have been maintained by Mosaic, which owns lots of heavy equipment and has years of experience fixing all sorts of problems. On the other hand, DEP is clueless, and if they have to step in to maintain Riverview in the event that Mosaic declares bankruptcy, we will see a catastrophe that will make Piney Point look like a picnic. I need to show you why these stacks crumble over time. First, we have to look up the meaning of phosphogypsum. So let's go to Wikipedia. Phosphogypsum is a calcium sulfate hydrate formed as a byproduct of the production of fertilizer from phosphate rock. Here's the important part. It is mainly composed of gypsum. Everyone should know what gypsum is because it is in all of our homes. Drywall is made up of 100% gypsum. When drywall is dry, it is rock hard and very durable. However, if you get drywall wet, it just crumbles. Everyone who has ever had a water leak knows that. This is the reason why these gypstacks will all fail over time. Gypsum actually just dissolves when it is exposed to water. That is how Mosaic moves this crap around. They mix it with water and it dissolves into a slurry so that it can be pumped through these large pipes to the stacks. Once on the top, the water dries out and they can pile it up higher and higher. Who in their right mind would ever approve building a dike from a substance that dissolves when it gets wet? The three big stacks, Riverview, Bartow, and the New Whale stacks, will all fail at some time. It should be no surprise to anyone why we are constantly having to repair cracks, clean up spills, and fill in sinkholes. It is just so sad that our government is too stupid to figure this out. We will continue to see disaster after disaster, and the taxpayers of Florida will have to spend billions of dollars to clean up this mess. People, when are we going to say enough is enough?